Okay, this is a reading of the chapter summaries for Chapter 2 in 8th grade. Section 1, Europeans set sail. Skilled Viking sailors. The Vikings were the first Europeans to make contact with North America. They were skilled sailors who developed a new style of ship that was more stable on a rough sea. In the year 1000, Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, set off for Greenland. Strong winds blew his ship off course, and he landed on the North American coast. The Vikings settled in a coastal area that Erikson called Vinland, but they left after a few years. Europeans did not return to the continent for centuries. In the early 1400s, Portugal became a leader in world exploration. Although he never set out on a voyage himself, Prince Henry the Navigator helped Portugal's explorers succeed. He built an observatory and a school of navigation to teach better methods of sailing. Europeans had several reasons to explore the world. They wanted spices from Asia. They wanted to learn more about Asia and its culture. They also wanted to convert Asians to the Christian faith. European sailors were able to travel in open seas without landmarks to guide them because of new technology. The astrolabe was used to chart a ship's location based on the position of the stars. The caravel was a new type of ship that was smaller, lighter, and easier to steer. Caravels used triangular sails that allowed ships to gather or to sail against the wind, and rudders that improved steering. A sea route to Asia. In the 1400s, Portuguese sailors traveled south along the coast of Africa, setting up trading posts along the way. In 1497, a Portuguese expedition, led by Vasco da Gama, sailed around the southern tip of Africa and reached India. These successful voyages had a number of effects, both positive and negative. Portugal's wealth and power increased. However, these travels eventually led to the spread of the slave trade. Other European nations soon began looking for their own sea routes to Asia. Section 2. Europeans reach the Americas. Columbus sails across the Atlantic. Christopher Columbus, a sailor from Genoa, Italy, believed he could reach Asia by sailing west across the Pacific Ocean. He asked King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain to pay for an expedition. In return, he promised great cities, new territory, and Catholic converts. Sailing with 3 ships, Columbus reached an island in the Bahamas in 1492. Columbus thought he had found a new route to Asia. In reality, he had reached another continent that was unknown to him. Columbus had made 3 more journeys to the Americas during his lifetime. When he died in 1506, he still thought he had reached Asia. The voyages of Columbus changed the way Europeans saw the world and also created conflict between European nations. In 1493, the Pope issued a decree that created the line of demarcation. This imaginary boundary divided the Atlantic Ocean between Spain and Portugal. The Portuguese king believed the government or the arrangement favored Spain, so the leaders of the 2 nations signed the Treaty of Tordesillas. This treaty moved the line of demarcation 800 miles further west and prevented a war between the 2 countries. Other explorers sailed to the Americas. After Columbus, other explorers sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1501, Amerigo Vespucci became convinced that he had not reached Asia but had discovered a new world. A German mapmaker labeled the continents across the ocean America in his honor. Vasco Núñez de Balboa, a Spanish explorer, crossed the jungles of Central America to see the Pacific Ocean in 1513. In 1519, Portuguese navigator Ferdinand Magellan sailed around the southern tip of South America and into the Pacific. Although Magellan was killed in the Philippine Islands, one ship from his expedition was the first to circumnavigate or go all the way around the globe. European explorers and settlers took plants and animals with them to America and brought back American plants and animals. This transfer was called the Columbian Exchange because it started with the explorations of Columbus. Over time, a trading pattern developed. Involving the exchange of raw materials, manufactured products, and slaves, among Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Section 3. Spain builds an empire. Spanish conquistadors. The Spanish sent conquistadors to the Americas on military expeditions. Conquistador Hernan Cortés went to present-day Mexico in 1519. He had heard of land to the west ruled by Montezuma II, the king of the Aztec Empire. The Spaniards believed the Aztec lands were a rich source of gold and silver. They also wanted to convert the Aztec to Christianity. Although they were greatly outnumbered, the conquistadors had superior weapons and formed alliances with the enemies of the Aztec. Cortés took control of the Aztec capital and killed Montezuma. Smallpox and other European diseases sped up the fall of the Aztec Empire. While seeking gold, Francisco Pizarro led his troops to capture the great Inca capital at Cusco. Within a few years, Pizarro had conquered the entire Incan Empire. The Spanish then began to create a vast empire which they called New Spain. They established settlements to serve as trading posts, missions to convert local Native Americans to Catholicism, and also military bases. Exploring the borderlands of New Spain. Spain's empire in America extended well beyond the lands taken from the Aztec and Inca. Regions claimed by Spanish explorers included the island of Puerto Rico, the coast of present-day Florida, and the coastal regions of the Gulf of Mexico. The Spanish were also explored what is now the southwestern United States, looking for cities of gold that were rumored to exist there. They traveled through unclaimed areas of Texas, Oklahoma, and as far north as Kansas. Spanish treatment of Native Americans. California was among the last borderlands settled by the Spanish. To pay back settlers for their work, Spain established the encomienda system. It gave settlers the right to tax Native Americans and make them work. Most of the workers were treated as slaves and forced to work on plantations in New Spain. Many Native Americans died of disease and exhaustion. The priest Bartolomé de la Casa spoke out against the terrible treatment of Native Americans. Section 4. The Race for Empires. Events in Europe. In 1517, a priest named Martin Luther launched the Protestant Reformation. His followers were called Protestants. Luther said the Catholic Church was too rich and abused its powers. The printing press helped spread Protestant ideas because large numbers of Bibles could be made. More people could read the Bible on their own instead of depending on priests to explain it. Often conflicts between Catholics and Protestants led to war. In the late 1500s, French Catholics fought French Protestants known as Huguenots. Many Huguenots traveled to the Americas for religious freedom. In 1534, King Henry VIII established the Church of England, or the Anglican Church. Henry declared himself head of his Protestant church. By breaking with the Catholic Church, King Henry made himself the enemy of other European rulers who were Catholic. King Philip II of Spain, a Catholic ruler, put together a large fleet called the Spanish Armada to defeat the Protestant nation of England. England had fewer ships, but they were quick. In July 1588, the English navy defeated the Armada. The defeat hurt the Spanish, whose economy was in trouble because of inflation. Inflation is a rise in prices caused by an increase in the amount of money in use. The search for a Northwest Passage. European nations wanted to find a Northwest Passage in North America that would allow ships to sail from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Early searches explored the coast from Canada to North Carolina. Jacques Cartier explored the St. Lawrence River and claimed lands for France. The Northwest Passage was not found, but the voyages led to more interest in North America. European presence in North America. Spain and Portugal claimed much of South and Central America, but left most of North America unexplored. In the late 1500s, Sir Walter Raleigh of England received a charter to found a colony in present-day Virginia. The first colonists didn't stay, but Raleigh sent more colonists. Those colonists disappeared. France built settlements in Florida, but the Spanish soon drove them out. In the 1600s, French colonies were established on the St. Lawrence River. The French claimed lands extending to the Mississippi River. The Dutch founded the town of New Amsterdam on Manhattan Island. Swedish settlers started New Sweden, along the Delaware River, but it was conquered by the Dutch colonists in 1655. Section 5. Beginnings of slavery in the Americas. The need for a new labor force. Diseases like measles, smallpox, and typhus had afflicted Europeans for many centuries before they came to the New World. As a result, Europeans were more immune to the diseases than Native Americans, who had never been exposed to them at all. Therefore, these European diseases had a devastating effect on the Native American population. Millions died in the years after Columbus reached the New World. Now, the European colonists needed a new workforce for their plantations. As Africans had already developed some immunity to the European disease, the colonists decided that slaves from West Africa could be the solution to the labor problem. The slave trade. In 1510, the Spanish government legalized the sale of slaves in its colonies. Over the next century, more than 1 million African slaves were brought to the Spanish and Portuguese colonies. The English and Dutch were also active slave traders. Enslaved people were often captured in the interior of Africa, chained and forced to march up 1,000 miles to the coast. They were then chained together and packed as cargo in the lower decks of ships crossing the Atlantic Ocean. This voyage was known as the Middle Passage. In the crowded ships, disease spread quickly. Many died of sickness, suffocation, or malnutrition during this voyage. So now you're going to go back to the lesson and go ahead and review the Quizlet and take your quiz. Should you need my help, don't hesitate to give me a call, Mrs. Devlin, an email, or send me a GChat, okay? You got this!